Hi everybody, Courtney here today to talk to you about starting over. I have started over many times in my life, from in my 20s when I was in a car accident, got a divorce, and had a stillborn baby all in the span of a year and a half, and I ended up filing bankruptcy. I would then decide I was never going to be back in that spot again, and I began to learn and educate myself on what to do to learn about financial literacy. And so I would end up marrying a man, and it just wasn't a good financial fit for me. There were a lot of problems. We wouldn't get in too bad of a situation, but we would live paycheck to paycheck for 20 years. And while I did make some good decisions, like putting enough money in our 401k from the 29 to 40, which we got divorced. So that money did build up. And when we got divorced, we had some debt, but we did have that money. We had a little bit of equity in our house. It was only $10,000. And I would end up buying him out of the house and keeping it. But I ended up having to start over. And at the time, I was only making $15,000 a year. And I had 4 kids at home. They were from the ages of 13 to 18. And my 18-year-old was not going to be moving out anytime soon. He was going to school locally. So I had to really kind of figure out what I was going to do. And I'm going to go over those steps with you today, because the biggest impediment to people starting over is the mindset of, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm going to give you 13 things I did. I guarantee you there's one thing in here that could apply to you if you're starting over. And that, for me, was the biggest thing in learning how to manage my finances, was keeping an open mind that no, not every podcast I listened to was going to be an exact fit for me, because we don't have the same lives. But there was something I could glean off of every podcast or video or book that I listened to. So I hope you can glean something off of here to help you. And for me, it's also a good reminder of things we're doing today to build wealth to fully retire soon. And I say fully, meaning eventually we're going to close down the 2 businesses that we have currently that we're keeping going. We had 3, but I'm on sabbatical. So the first one is I started an emergency fund. I was 40 years old with 4 kids, $15,000 in income. I started an emergency fund. I did have some money put back in my little small business I had started the year before, but I started to save at least $50 a month. I quickly got that $1,000. I had a yard sale. I sold everything I could sell. Every penny I had coming in, I scavenged off the top of it. So if I paid the bills and purchased the groceries, I would try really hard to put back a little bit of money here. And I got that $1,000 emergency fund really quickly doing that. Eventually, when the divorce was final, I would build it up to be more than that, until it was like a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Eventually, it became 1 year of income, but that took a long, long time. The next one was I got out of debt. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember exactly, because 4 kids, working full time, a lot of mental and emotional trauma that was happening there with that marriage. But I remember having the car. I owed $11,000 on it when we got divorced. We each got our cars with our car debt. I got half of a credit card that we had used to put windows in the house. I want to say it was like $3,500. And he got his school loans and half of that debt. And then I had a house payment that was around $1,260 a month, I believe. And man, y'all, I mean, making $15,000 a year, that was so hard. But I will tell you what I did in a little bit. But every extra penny I had for the next few years, as I started working more, went to pay off that debt. And within about 3 years, all of the debt was paid off. And I did do a little bit of a dance with the car. I got $11,000 for the car about 4 years after I got divorced, and I was making more money, and I did trade that car in. No, I'm sorry. I sold it, put a large down payment on a new car that I paid off in 3 years, but we're not going to get into that today. We're talking about what I did, and I got out of debt is what I did. The next thing is, the house I was in was built in 1930. It was 2,600 square feet, but I had 4 kids, and I had a really big basement. I had another kid living with me that was a friend of my son's, And I didn't want to move my children. My daughter, I had adopted out of foster care. She had had so much trauma. She was 9 when she was adopted. My son has autism. So I just was like determined that I was going to stay there until they graduated high school. The neighborhood was a very family-friendly neighborhood, and I was like, I'm not moving these kids out of this neighborhood. Their friends are here. They can walk in the neighborhood. They could walk to the store and things like that. So I did not upgrade anything. I just repaired what was broken, and sometimes I couldn't even do that, to be honest. So like if the AC broke or something like that, it was a wing and a prayer, y'all. I mean, I remember trying to fixing the washing machine by myself with the manual or YouTubing things, but I would often just keep a little bit of a savings aside to make repairs. I remember one time the floors buckled. The house was, my gosh, like 70, 80 years old, and the freaking floors buckled. I was like, you gotta be kidding me right now, right? But how did it never buckle before? But I had to move a couch on top of them. I could not afford to fix them. And I did end up saving. I did not sell that house for 8 more years. So what I did was as that 8 years went by, I kept a little bit of money to the side. I got estimates on how to fix everything, and I saved up to make those repairs. I did not upgrade. I focused on keeping everything in working order and keeping it clean. You can do this with your car. You can do this with your home. You can do this with your clothes. You're going to focus on repairs and keeping clean. You're not trying to get a new couch. You're not trying to fancy up. And if you do want something new, you're going to thrift or flea market it. Number 4 is I sold whatever I could. And so I was always selling things. I gave the kids' dad almost all the furnishings in the house because I wanted my children to have, I couldn't move. I wanted to move. I didn't want to be in the house that I had with my ex-husband, but I didn't want to do that to my children. So I gave most of the furnishings to my ex-husband when we got divorced because my mom had purchased a house that was furnished, and I took what I could of that. And then I purchased things at yard sales to do my house. But I had so many yard sales. I sold things on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. It was easier back then than it is now. But I got rid of everything I didn't need, and I tried to make extra money any way I could. Number 5 is adopt minimalism. So it goes without saying, when you're getting rid of everything. I also knew that I didn't want to live there forever. So I tried to begin to reduce what I had only down to what I need. So even now, I only keep like a few blankets, a few sets of sheets, a few sets of towels, things like that. 1 or 2 extra for each bed, so that if you're changing it and you run out, you have extra. But adopting a more minimalistic lifestyle can help you to start over. As you get rid of things, you have less to take care of, less to pay for. It really helped me, and it helped me have more value and feel like I had more value in what I did have. The next one was adopt a more plant-based diet. So I didn't go completely plant-based until 2.5 years ago, and this is 12 years later now since I got divorced and had to start over. And I would like to say, if you're watching this, when I started over, I did have $90,000 in a 401k. I had debt. My net worth beyond that 401k was negative. And I had those 4 kids, and I had a very low income. We are now worth a lot more than that. We are now 7 figures, low 7 figures. So I am a true testament that this can be done. I did get remarried. My husband now was in bankruptcy when we met. So it's not like I got remarried and that fixed the financial situation. So I'll talk about that too in a minute. And if you like this content, please like and subscribe. So we eat healthy, and I eat more plant-based meals. So what that meant was when the kids were growing up, it was a little bit harder when I was working, but I would focus on eating more plant-based meals, more rice and beans, more cheat meals, soups, and things like that. Of course, when I was single, it was different, but back then when we were still eating meat, it would be like a couple of things, vegetables, more vegetable heavy, and less meat. I even did this when I was married before. I cut our lifestyle down to just 4 meat meals per week. If there were leftovers, great, but I only made 4 meat meals per week to cut our grocery budget. So that's one thing you can do, is make more plant-based meals. Oatmeal is like 22 cents a serving. So if you're struggling financially, that's a great way to do it. Bean soup and cornbread is like $1 a serving. All right, the next one is invest. So I did have that 401k, and I know some of you on here will not even have a 401k. But if you can start an investment account, it's always better to be in the market than not in the market. Even with the market going down right now, you got to look at it like it's on sale. It's like if you have oranges, that's like a stock share, and the orange prices drop. That's what's happening right now to stocks. So I did have that 401k, and at the very beginning, I didn't invest, but as I started making more money, even if it was only a couple $100s a year, some years I could put more, some years I could put less. I invested, and it was usually no more than $3,500 a year. And we'll talk about how I got to the point of doing that in a minute, because this isn't in any particular order. But if you are older, especially over 40 or 50, and you are not prepared for retirement, you must invest. If you do not invest, you're going to be delegated to living on Social Security the rest of your life. The average Social Security check is $1,600. And when you put your money in the market, especially in low-cost index funds, the average return is 8 to 10%, and it will compound over the years and grow and grow. And you will be so much better off if you combine all these things I'm telling you. Have a low cost of living lifestyle, invest, have your Social Security, maybe a pension, and then eventually, if your life doesn't cost a lot and you've got investments in Social Security or a pension, you're going to be so much better off. The next one was to downsize. I knew I was going to sell the house. Before I knew for sure I was going to get married, I've been with my husband. We've been dating almost that whole time, but I wasn't sure if we were going to get married because we had all these kids, and it was very hectic at first. And I thought we would, and we both kind of thought we would, but there were times where it was hard. I had a plan. A friend of mine had a house for sale that was $87,000, and my plan was to buy her house. And when I had sold my house, I had gotten to the point where if I had done that, my payment with taxes and insurance was going to be around $400 a month, and I was going to be able to put a big down payment and pay it off early. I ended up getting married, and so what we did was, when we purchased this farm, we sold my house in town, and we used that money to build up a savings and to put back into this house as we were building it. So downsize, downsize, downsize. Go to what you need and only what you need. It's less taxes, it's less insurance, it's less utilities, it's less maintenance and upkeep. The next one, number 9, is find free or cheap hobbies. So we just found, my husband and I are really good at this. We love to go for walks. My hobbies, I've never taken on costly hobbies for this reason. I worked in health clubs for so long that I could always go to the health club for free. So that was a given. My husband and I would go to a movie. We would never go on Friday or Saturday night or at night unless it was $2 a night or a matinee. So we are not going to go pay $15 to $20 for a movie ticket. But we would go on $2 night, and if popcorn or a drink was $2, we would get that. It's usually $1. Or we would go on the Saturday, Sunday matinee, and we wouldn't get any snacks, or we would budget for that. So we also, not to say we haven't ever done anything expensive, but we always think about how can we do this cheaper. We would go out, many of you have heard me say, back when I ate meat, we would go out to fish on Fridays, catfish Fridays, but we wouldn't go out for $200 steak dinners. So everything was calculated, and our hobbies were free. If you are a senior citizen watching this and you have Medicare and you have a Medicare supplement, you can usually join a gym for free through the Medicare supplement called Silver Sneakers or something like that. Going to the library, taking hikes, taking walks, finding meetings in your town or events. We have a lot of outdoor concerts here in the summertime that are completely free. Cheap or free things, that's a great way. Reading, watching movies. The next one is, I use this philosophy, I talk about it all the time, called good, better, best. So for instance, when we built this house, that was like 9 years or 8 years in after I was starting over, and we had been together. We had moved in together a couple years before. My now husband had saved up his money. I was saving up money. We were both working a lot more, and we saved up enough money for this property and to build this house. We actually purchased this with a house on it that we planned to remodel, and we had to burn it down. The house had a bunch of foundation issues. So it was just a little bitty farmhouse. We were going to live there. It was like 900 square feet. So when we found out we were going to have to build, we had taken out a loan for $218,000. We had put $28,000 down. And we had more than that. We had $48,000 saved, and I had even more saved. So again, you're talking 8 years of me earning more, saving more. I've never been a high earner. In that 8 years, I averaged about $37,000 a year, but I kept my lifestyle really cheap. So we ended up keeping the house payment the same as what it was that when I paid it. As our lifestyle financially increased, we did not increase the lifestyle that we lived. We did not increase the house payment. We did not increase fancy cars. We did not start taking fancy vacations. We got to the point where we could live on, back then, about $33,000 a year. Now it's about $53,000, probably not that much. And we just didn't go up. So just avoid lifestyle creep and do something. When you start getting some more money, start thinking about what's better, but do I need the best? If I've been driving, I'll give you an example. So I told you that I had a car, it was paid off. I started traveling for my job a few years in 2014. I started traveling for my job, and I needed to have a better car that had better gas mileage, and my car was having a lot of problems. And so I sold that car for cash. I put a big down payment on that house, on that car, and the rest of it I used to pay my ex-husband off on the house. And what I did was, I knew I didn't get the best car I could afford. I just got something better, economical, that had low car insurance, and I knew I could pay it off in 3 years. When we built this house, I had lived in that old house, not being able to make repairs. We built a 1,779 square foot house, which is big for us now, but we still had our youngest at home. I didn't go out and do a lot of expensive things. The wood you see on this, plus I'm a huge environmentalist, is second grade wood. It's not the wood they sell like to the lumber stores and stuff. It's the leftovers. So we did things like that. My whole kitchen is a recycled kitchen except for the countertops and the appliances. All the cabinets are recycled, and I painted them. My sink is recycled. When I went to buy appliances, I saved up the cash and paid cash for them. I didn't get the most expensive granite. Honestly, I wish I had spent a little more on the granite. I do not love it. But if you look back here, if you walk around my house, a lot of what I own was purchased at flea markets, thrift sales. It was used, or we saved up and spent less. Like when we went to buy this couch, this is the first new couch. I've had 2 new couches in my life, but since I've been with my husband, we had a budget for how much we were going to spend. And we had a used Craigslist couch for $300 for years. And we knew exactly what we could afford. We didn't go buy a $5,000 couch. We purchased a $2,000 couch. I had never spent, I don't think, above $350 on a couch before that. So it's just, you don't need the best. Just get something a little better than what you have. Don't increase your lifestyle too much. I could go out right now and buy a brand new Land Rover for cash. I'm not going to do that. I'm driving a 2013 Honda Accord, and it's great. I love it. I would rather have the money in the bank, because the minute I drive that Land Rover off, then that's going to depreciate. It's going to cost me more in insurance. It's going to cost me more in upkeep and maintenance, and it doesn't really do more for me or make me happier than my 2013 Honda Accord. So when I sold my Subaru that I had purchased new and paid off, I drove that car for 5 years. I had a lot of problems with it, transmission. And when I sold it, I made $12,000. I took that $12,000 and purchased a $12,000 car with lower mileage is what I did. And I've been super happy, but I was determined, no more car payments. The next thing is, number 11, is have a budget even if you don't stick to it. I heard this today on a show called Below the Median, and the son that they raised, he's now grown. He was saying, just have a budget, even if you don't stick to it. And I've never heard it like that, but I thought that's kind of me. So I have a budget that shows, actually, I think I have it right here. I have a budget that shows our base bills every month. See, I just do it on paper every month. It has our base bills, like what we make every month, what our net worth is, how much is in our roofing business, our personal account, my yoga account, which I'm on sabbatical. I saved up $5,969 in that account before I left, our Airbnb, our money market, and then we have 3 CDs, and then we have our investments. I have all of that, so I know our net worth. And then I have what we owe. We do use credit cards, and we pay them off monthly for the points. We have our water bill, our electric bill, our Wi-Fi, our Able account. That's my son that's disabled. I put money in his account every month. Netflix, Vanguard, that's our IRA, and Planet Fitness for my husband. I have that amount that is $1,122 a month, plus that's what our expenses are because we paid off our house. But I have that, and I just, on the credit card, if it starts getting above a certain amount, which I kind of say $2,000 to $2,500 a month, then we stop spending. I keep an eye on it, and I just never let it get above that. So I kind of know that, like, I don't want us to have expenses over like $3,350 is kind of a goal every month. And we make substantially more than that, and we save it. So as you earn more, as you rebuild your life, you have to keep your expenses below what you're earning. You've heard that your whole life probably. Live below your means. The next thing that we did was we increased our income. So when I met my husband, he was in bankruptcy. He had just gotten a divorce, and he had back taxes. He had a business that wasn't very successful. He had another side hustle doing carpentry work, and it was actually pretty successful. But in his mind, he never saw it as something. It was always just kind of a side hustle for him, like handyman type of stuff, doing roofs and things like that. And I had a business, and I come from a very entrepreneurial family that's had many businesses. And over time, we started to realize, I was like, this contracting carpentry business you have probably would be a really good business. Like, that's a really big need. And so for me personally, the minute I divorced or got away from my ex-husband, I called one of my jobs where I was teaching yoga, and I said, do you have anything available? And they offered me a job for $10 an hour. Yes, I know it's terrible. For 20 hours a week. After taxes, I was making $600 a month on that, and I was making about $1,100 teaching yoga. And I took that job, and then I had a little yoga school, and I decided I was going to have to get that yoga school to grow, and I was going to have to do it quick. And so I started offering more yoga classes, more workshops. I took every yoga job I could get. And that first couple of years, I made around 27 to 30. I started at 15, and I made about 30. Eventually, I would make up to 37, and eventually, as I grew my school, and I grew in people knowing about me and my popularity of the school, I think my best year was between 57 and 59,000. And as I grew that, I never increased my lifestyle. I never increased. I paid the debts off. I didn't get a bigger house. I did buy the used car, but like I said, I got a payment that was well within my budget, paid it off quickly. So you are going to have to earn money, extra money. If you're seeing this and you're like, and you have enough money that you can get your debts paid off and live on, great, and start investing. But if you have debt, if you haven't invested for retirement, you've got to figure out a way to reduce your expenses and make more money. And I don't know what that would mean, but instead of just being like, well, I can't go out and make $10 an hour. Well, $10 an hour is better than no money. I would be out door dashing or Instacarting if it meant not being able to eat or not being able to invest. The next one is you have to increase your savings, and that would be emergency money. So, and you would want to have that in cash, literally having enough cash in your house to live like for an emergency, not like 6 months or anything like that. Keep that in a money market or a high yield savings account. CDs right now, some people use I-bonds. I tried to do the I-bonds, but I found them to be very tedious and I had a lot of trouble with the website. It was a disaster. And then I use Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab are good as well. I do low cost index funds. There's a book called The Simple Path to Wealth. I would highly recommend it. That's a really good one. And so that's really all I have for you. Is if you are older, over 40 or 50, I would highly suggest you go to socialsecurity.gov, create your PIN, and find out or call them and get an appointment what your Social Security is going to be, and then figure out how you can manage to live on your Social Security. If it's $1,600 a month, then you got to figure out how to get a paid for house or get something that's a quarter of that, around $400 a month. And you say, how would you do that? I helped my mom do that. And you've got to get your expenses down, build your income, and it takes time, and you've got to be patient with yourself. So I know nothing in here was earth shattering. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you so much. Bye-bye.